So welcome to Financing Study Abroad. My name is Jessica Dickow. I work in the Center for Global Education. I'm a manager of global programs. The programs that I've managed personally have been Greco-Roman, Roman Greco, Japan, Cork, Ireland. I've also, in the past, I managed Australia. I've done several short-term programs. I have been to Salzburg and I have been on our program site in South Africa. So I am familiar with the locations you're going to and much about your program, although the specific program details, if you had something very particular, you may wish at some point to reach out to Nicole Clemens, who manages the Austria program, and Nicole Matuska, who manages South Africa. But I advise a lot on financing study abroad and scholarships. So that's how I come to this space. So we can just go ahead and jump right in. Feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat. I've got that open, so I should be able to see it coming in. So if you go to our website, we do have quite a few resources available. On the Center for Global Education website, we have our own little tab, Financing Study Abroad. It goes through the costs, scholarship, financial aid, those sorts of pieces. So if you come to this space, what I'm going to draw your attention to is these Financing Your Experience semester programs. These are specific details about the costs associated with each program. So I'll walk through an example just so you understand how to interpret it and share with you where these things are. I'll try to go through the website and the resources that we have section kind of quickly so that we can get to your individual questions or concerns. So you've probably seen this sheet, this PDF with the semester study abroad programs. So if we're looking at Austria, there's two important things to understand about this. This is the on-campus costs. This is what we estimate based on the average expense for a student on campus at St. Ben's St. John's. So it does vary, the tuition does vary a little bit between St. Ben's St. John's based on some of our student activity fees and things like that. Obviously, there's no education abroad fee. The insurance is your own, or $500 for books, maybe. If you're, in particular majors, you may be spending that much quite regularly for even just a single class. I was an English major, so I just had to buy a bunch of novels. We didn't have quite such an expensive semesters most of the time, except for my science classes. And of course, housing, your meal contract, all of that. So we determined that you spend right around $6,000 on being on campus, not counting tuition. So if we go over to say, look at Austria. Austria, the study abroad application fee, program fee is right here. So the fee includes your housing, your excursions with the programs, if there's any payments for hiring faculty, that sort of thing, that's all included in that fee. And everyone pays the $300 application fee. Now, if you haven't done that, or if you're working on an installment plan, that's just fine. We work with students, and if anything comes up with that, we can meet with you to talk about how to get that $300 paid, maybe over 2 or 3 or 4 payments, whatever needs to happen. This fee goes to cover your orientation and your insurance while you're abroad. So it's not just a fee, it goes back into service for you on the program. These are all estimates. Well, not the visa application fee. There is a visa required for Austria. You can see that we have estimated that everybody's costs for books and materials are relatively the same. Very often there aren't many things to purchase. A lot of faculty put things on Canvas. Sometimes It's available on site for you to borrow. Some programs you do have to purchase books, and oftentimes you can do that before you leave, or sometimes you can buy electronic books, makes it a little easier to carry and oftentimes cheaper. So there are some options there. We are requiring that everyone have a cell phone this year, something that will work not only on Wi-Fi. So there's options there. You could, if you had an unlocked phone, you can always add a SIM card when you get to country. You could, if you have, you could look into what it would cost to add an international component to your existing cell phone plan. You could purchase a cheap pay-as-you-go phone when you arrive in country. All of these things are options that students have done in the past, are pretty reasonable. I know recently, well, I say recently, COVID world, it feels semi-recently and also 10 years ago simultaneously. In the fall of 2019, I was in Europe and I was in Cork. I unlocked my phone, I popped a SIM card in, and I think it would have cost me 35 euros a month for calling, data, texting, all sorts of things. And it worked in multiple countries. So that was pretty reasonable. So that's an option. That's sort of an example. You live in international dorms, and I think you are responsible. There's a community kitchen that you use for cooking. We guesstimate based on what students report to us they have spent in the past on things like the meal contract, the transportation and airfare, and the personal miscellaneous. Now, if you eat out a lot, your food costs might be higher, right? I don't recommend that you only eat ramen because that's not very nutritious so in terms of a well-balanced diet, but there are ways to keep the costs down. So that is oftentimes one space where you have a little bit more flexibility. If we look over at South Africa, you can see the same sort of thing. The visa fees for this program, because you have to do it as a program, are included. And then the costs vary. Food is a little cheaper. In South Africa, you live in community apartments. And so you'd be doing cooking, and maybe you can shop with your roommates and collaborate on cooking and save money that way, those sorts of things. Airfare to get to South Africa is a little more expensive than to get to Austria. So you end up with this number that looks a little big, right? You're like 9,000, that seems high. But what it's in comparison of, if you spend normally around 6,000, and then this program would be 9,000, really above and beyond what you are spending on average here on campus is more like this number, okay? So that's how you read the difference there. The cost above on-campus expenses. Oh, and I go into greater detail there. I could have used that one, but I wanted to jump back and forth for South Africa. So we've covered that essentially. Another thing on our website that's very helpful is building a budget. We have a worksheet plus some recommendations of apps that you can utilize to help you start planning and preparing. If you're not already using a budget and kind of thinking about a budget and working that way, it sometimes, it needs practice to make it really effective. So you might start trying those apps, some of those applications, the travel wallet, the you need a budget app, or things like that. You might start trying them before you go to make sure that they function the way you want them to. Just practice adhering to a budget to see what then would be possible. This is the worksheet that we have available to you. It's fillable, so you could go in and enter all of your expenses and then where you're going to get money and see if there is a gap there, how you're going to address it. Whether you're going to take out a loan, or we're going to start pursuing some additional scholarships, or conversation to have with your parents, or whoever might be supporting you in this. Lovely picture from South Africa. I'm just going to cover this quickly in case we had anyone out there still thinking of summer programs. And sadly, our Kenya and our UK Children's Lit are not running. It's really our Dublin and our Bosnia. So this sheet works the same, except that there are no summer expenses. So it's not a comparison between what you would normally be spending on campus. This summer embedded and global fellowships are all in addition. So then they work the same way with course fees and the general fees. These are all based on estimates in terms of transportation and personal miscellaneous. And if there are any food expenses, housing is always covered by the program fee. So scholarships. So we will have a CSB SJU scholarship open February 22nd. You'll be getting an email about it if you apply. If you've applied to a program and you're in that process, you'll get an email to start applying for the St. Ben St. John Scholarship. The short essay, I recommend that everyone give it a try. It is a needs-based scholarship, but it's not a particularly demanding application process in the sense that it's like a 300-word essay. And that information will come out in emails to everyone who is in the process of applying when we hit February 22nd, and a little bit before then you'll start getting some information. But just so it's on your radar, have any of you, just out of curiosity, deferred from last year? Or are you new applications this year? Were you on programs last year and deferred?
I was, yeah.
Okay. I was not.
I'm new.
Okay, so like I said, I recognize all your names, but just trying to make sure I have everybody placed. If you did receive a scholarship or for some reason your program does not run, in the world of COVID, everything has made me more cautious. We do have a host of information on our website about how we determine whether programs can run or not. You'll be obviously receiving additional information. We are very hopeful for the fall, but if you should happen to be on a program that for some reason was deferred and you did apply for the scholarship and receive the scholarship, you can defer the scholarship to another program, another St. Ben St. John's program, okay? So if you decided, I'll wait a year and try again, the scholarship will follow you. If you move to a different program, the scholarship will follow you. So we have the CSB and the SJU Global Scholarships. We have scholarships for our summer global fellowships. We have scholarships pertaining to specific locations like the Father Neil Lawrence, which looks at St. John's, but then a lot of the departments have scholarships as well, very often tied to language. But they are places, if you haven't already gone to review and see if you might qualify for any of those, that is another good option just internally to St. Ben St. John's. Beyond St. Ben St. John's, we do have quite a few different options to look at. And this is a slightly different world, the scene with COVID. So I'm not seeing, some of the information is a little harder to get. I think I'm hopeful that in the spring, as programs are looking more towards the fall, that some of these scholarship programs will start coming back online because they went offline last fall in terms of knowing exactly when they were going to open up again to sending scholarships, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be looking and just checking in with them. So this DAD one is around Germany, so like German language programs. You can check out there. We of course have some for Japan. Diversity Abroad Network has some interesting scholarships, some specific ones to Locations Fund for Education Abroad. The application deadline is tomorrow. And since you need a letter of recommendation, if you haven't started, that's probably too late for that one for the fall. But if for some reason in the spring, like with South Africa, the application will be open again in September. So you should start watching it again for the next cycle. And that's when you would apply if you were on a spring program. Their maximum scholarship grants are $5,000. We also have, if you were doing the Greco-Roman, Roman Greco, our partner CEA has a scholarship. For London and Dublin, our partner has a scholarship. Gilman, so if you are on a Pell Grant or eligible to receive Pell Grant funds, you could apply for the Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship, and that one will be due March 2nd, and I believe that the application should be opening soon. You will need to connect with me to complete that scholarship. You need an advisor in the academic advisor in CGE, sorry, in CGE to sign off a study abroad advisor, and then somebody in financial aid. And so we need to give you updated dates and information like that. The amazing thing about the Gilman, if you are Pell eligible, is you can apply, if you get on it early enough, you have 2 cycles to probably apply through. So this one is going to be eligible for people who programs would start, I'm trying to think, I think it's May through March. So if you were a fall program or a spring program, you can apply in this round of scholarships for the Gilman. If for some reason you've already applied and you didn't get it, you can apply again. So you can try again if you didn't receive a Gilman in the last one, which is why it's really handy to try to get ahead in that cycle. If you're a little further out, then you get 2 shots at it. And they do up to $5,000 for most of our locations. If you are the child of or the dependent of an active service member, then you'd be eligible for the Gilman McCain Scholarship. Boren is around national security issues, but there's a lot of different topics. It's quite a competitive scholarship, but it is also quite good. So these are all scholarships to take a peek at. And then there's a lot of places to go and find additional scholarship information. So I usually offer up goabroad.com because they have this huge database. The easiest way to find scholarships here is to go to their main page and then scroll all the way down. It's a little bit, you can get a little lost if you try to go in through some of the scholarships or the study abroad, and then there's a lot of ways to get lost because they have a ton of information, really useful information for a lot of different things. You can look at internships and working abroad after you graduate and all sorts of things. But I find if what you're looking for is scholarships specifically, the easiest way to get to those quickly without sort of getting bogged down in a whole bunch of other interesting things along the way, is go straight to the bottom and find scholarships at the bottom and then click on that. Last time I checked, they had 500 plus scholarships available on there. Now, realistically, most of those scholarships aren't going to apply to like one of our students necessarily on any single one program. Like it might be for studying in economics in France. It might be for high school students. It might be for a whole host of things, but there are a good number of scholarships on there that are general. There's one that I often highlight that's around sort of this backpack company, this travel company, Tortuga Travel, and they do backpacks and travel gear and stuff. And they have a very general application. They offer $1,000. Submit your essay, and then if you were to get it, you get $1,000 and a backpack, and they eventually want you to send them a picture of yourself traveling with the backpack. So there are some clothing companies, there's Coke, there's Google, so there's some bigger companies and some more general applications. And spaces on there, not just for US citizens, but also permanent residents or international students as well. So if you have a visa, like an F visa to be here, there are some options there too. You just have to be a resident of the US and enrolled in a 4-year institution in the US. So oodles of scholarships there. So it takes a little while to weed through them, but it's worth your time. Salzburg, that's Salzburg. It's pretty, lots of chocolate. I like chocolate, so it was a big selling point for me. So even, I know you haven't gone abroad yet, but there are other ways as well. After you graduate, maybe you went abroad and you think, oh, that was awesome, I want to do that again. Maybe it didn't work in your schedule or something came up this year. There are other opportunities. So I just like to connect those as well. There's not a single time in your life that which is the only time you can have these experiences. This is an awesome time, and we have some amazing programs, and the locations you all are looking at, I say from experience, are really wonderful locations and great programs. So I highly recommend them, but they aren't the only moment that these things are possible. The Critical Language Scholarship, I don't know that any of us are exploring languages that would fall under there. The languages that fall into those categories are Hindi, Japanese, Chinese, maybe Korean, Urdu, those sorts of things. But we do have this office on campus, the Competitive Fellowships and Awards. So the Fulbright program are the same people that give you Gilman to do Fulbright. So they're both run by the State Department. So Fulbright, if you wanted to teach abroad, study abroad, do research abroad, this is a program where they fund those kinds of programs. It's competitive, but it is also highly regarded. So it's something to keep an eye on for the future. The Marshall, the Rhodes, and the Gates scholarships are all regarding graduate school in the UK. So obviously Cambridge, one's at Oxford. So these are opportunities to study in the UK at some prestigious institutions. JET, if you wanted to go and teach in Japan for a year, this is run by their government. The Fulbright has many, many, many locations, but they don't go to Japan because Japan has their own program, JET. Korea has their own government program as well, although you can do Fulbright in Korea. So it's called EPIC. Germany, you'll see they do scholarships, they do study and research, and they also fund other kinds of programs. There's a program, a teaching assistantship program in France. There's a couple programs in Spain. I just like to catch students and share that these are things you can keep your eye on for maybe considering your junior year, your senior year. So Buen Viaje, this is Viña del Mar, our program in Chile. And our program in Ireland. Thank you. Group that was in Cork. So I'm going to pause there